Sound of ringing cat claws. Raise that thing. So I always tell people, they're like, what do you think your best skill is? Pulling nails. We're really good at pulling nails.
They're the fastest new construction remodelers in the West.
That's what we always say, yeah. If you want a window in that wall that's not there, we'll get it in real quick.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding podcast, live from the International Builder Show. This is the 7th recording from the floor here in the Fine Homebuilding booth, and I am joined by Rob Watzak, Digital Brand Manager.
Hello.
Tim Uhler, Framer Extraordinaire.
Hello.
Bryan Uhler, Businessman Extraordinaire.
Hello.
Thanks, guys, for being here. This is going to be awesome. I've been a huge fan of your work for 2 decades now, because you started writing for JLC when I was still there, working with Dave Frayne.
Yep.
And what was the first magazine article you had in a national publication?
It was how to install fiber cement siding.
And did you do a good job? Has the practice changed?
No, I think it's basically the same. It was at the time I just happened to be on the forums.
Yep.
And he was just looking for people that would write.
Yes.
And that was the big change, as we had switched over from LP when it had its inner seal failure.
Did you guys have problems with that product?
We did remove some, but
Yeah.
some of those houses, it's still on. I was
Really?
at a building a couple weeks ago that has the old inner seal from '93, and they had just repainted. Only the second time it's been repainted, it looks like it's the new stuff.
Does it have wide overhangs?
Yeah, 3-foot overhangs.
That's.
Yep.
I tell people, if you want to make a house that lasts and has minimal maintenance, put big overhangs on
Yeah.
it. Modern seems like a problem, and capes without overhangs also seem like a problem. Anyway, I'm off topic here. So, what do you guys think about the Builder Show? What have you been looking at?
I thought one kind of a cool product was basically tape for doing a garage. And instead of having to do mud to get your fire rating, it's fire rated tape.
Get out.
So I thought that was kind of cool.
That is.
Especially for a remodeler.
Oh,
who,
yeah.
Who might want to, shave some steps off for some time and just be able to get it done and move on.
Yeah, not make a mess in your client's garage, right?
Yeah.
You're standing and taping drywall is a huge pain.
The thing I just saw was over at Fasten Master. They've got a screw design for partition walls, especially up to trusses, where, I don't know if you saw that, but it's got the little cutter on the screw, and it's got a little, I think it's plastic. Basically, the screw stays proud so that it can slide up and down the wall.
To accommodate truss uplift.
Yep.
Wow.
That's cool. Is that on the market yet, did they say?
Yeah. So, the old days of the metal clip with the little nail on the side, and that's how you would
Yes.
connect your walls, keep them plumb. Now you can just run that screw through, and then it will just adjust as your house changes with the seasons.
I bet you guys have that trouble.
We're all hand cut.
You're
so
cutting roofs, though. Yeah. But you would in your climate, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of cool that over at the Daikin booth, they've got, I can't remember what it's called, but their new thermostat that's going to come out, it uses sub-gigahertz for its networking. So even if your power goes out and your Wi-Fi goes out, so you can't control your mechanical system with your phone, however that works, its frequency, you can still have heating and cooling. And then it does kind of a mesh network with all of the heads, so you don't have to have a generator. Well,
What?
I suppose you still have to have a generator to run the outdoor unit and that kind of a thing. But if you lose your Wi-Fi, like if your cable goes down, you can still run your system.
They would be like panic in the streets if the Wi-Fi went out in my house. My 14-year-old would
Nice.
lose his mind.
But I thought that was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And Daikin makes mini splits, right?
Yeah, and that's what we use in all of our houses. So I got to spend a good amount of time with those guys.
Do you guys use the wall cassettes or the ducted ones?
We do both. If it's a smaller house, we typically have one line set that goes to a ducted unit in the attic. And a lot of times our bedrooms are kind of clustered together. And then if it's a great room concept, which pretty much every house is now, we've got a head in the living room.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that you found that to be clients are satisfied with that?
We have had no complaints whatsoever. Yeah.
And why do you guys pick the Daikin product line?
That's what our mechanical contractor used.
Okay.
Yeah. So Washington State Energy Code, you have to have, there's like a menu of credits that you end up using. So one of them that you can do is a high efficiency heating system. Well, the advantage of the mini split is you get AC as well.
Right.
So we could do like a 95% efficient gas-fired furnace, but then there's no cooling. So then you have to add that onto it, which costs more, so it's an all-in-one system, and that's nice for a selling point that they've got AC in the summer.
How long have you guys been installing those?
6, 7 years?
Has it?
It's been quite a while.
Yeah, I was going to say 4 or 5.
Yeah.
A while. Yeah.
Yeah, and no trouble.
Not
no,
that I know. of.
we had one where the vane broke inexplicably. And of course, the homeowner doesn't fess up to it. And you're thinking, I'll bet you when I told them that they have to clean it out periodically, that they tried to open it up without it being open.
They tried
Sure
to
enough,
pry open that thing.
They tried to pry it open and broke it.
Well, we had one problem. Mom and Dad's house. Dad did not think that it was keeping up. They just needed to clean the screen or the filter, whatever it was.
So there's some maintenance.
Yeah. But any HVAC system requires filters to be cleaned, right?
Yep, exactly.
Go ahead.
So how long have you two been working together?
I am 42, and Brian is almost 40, so that long. So we're yeah, as I hear laughter from the side. Yeah, so Dad started the company in 78, just a few months after I was born, and so we've all worked together basically the whole time.
Did he work for other people prior to that, starting his own business?
Yeah, he when he moved out from North Dakota, he tried to hire on with the bank because he's an accountant. That was his education, and then the local production builder was hiring. So this was in the early, like 1973. And so then he realized one day as a superintendent why he has all the stress.
Right.
Why does
And
he
not
just-
making any of the money, right?
Yeah, why does he just do it for himself? So,
And you guys bought some land, or he bought some land?
yeah, he lost all of his savings, I think, on the first job, but he they stuck with it.
Yeah.
I mean, they look back and think, like, he won't play the stock market because of the risk.
But he started a construction business.
In the
As a
late
spec
70s,
builder.
yeah, in the late 70s, early 80s, when interest rates were,
Through the roof, like
Yeah.
14, 15%,
Yeah.
I think he had
right?
construction lending at 21 was the worst he ever had.
Oh
my
my
God.
isn't that
gosh.
insane? So
That's
he would frame
insane.
during the day with a lead carpenter, pay himself wages, and then do the business stuff at night. So at least he was making a wage as he was going through.
Do you guys find you can like run a business on a 40-hour week, or do you find yourselves working way more than that?
I work less than that.
Yeah.
That's great. You guys.
Our average is like, historically, I think at the end of the year, we're like 38 hours the way it works with weather and things. We don't work weekends. You know, with Instagram and things, keeping up with some of that would be the off-hour stuff.
Yeah.
And Brian gets the off-hours, you know, the weekend visit
Yeah.
with somebody, but
Do you see like a benefit to your business doing the Instagram, or is that just a love of doing it?
you could answer that better than
I've
me.
become a better builder.
Yeah.
How so?
I can like communicate with Steve Basic. We
Yes.
email back and forth with structural details and, oh yeah, I did something like that 10 years ago. You know,
Awesome.
so you can talk to these guys and they'll respond. It's not like if I followed LeBron James, I don't think he's going to help me with my crossover. Just a guess. But this community is still so small that you're able to get that interaction with other people.
How do you vet the information you're getting, though, from your peers in a social media environment?
I just do tons of reading in general. Except Fine Homebuilding, that magazine. Just kidding.
Can't trust that.
No, there's just a ton of print media, Green Building Advisor. It just has to kind of fit in.
Yes.
But even with the internet, it's not just one source of information, but if it all fits into the whole.
If you find consistency in the
Right.
in the information,
Yeah.
then you feel like you can trust it.
Yep.
Because we were talking earlier about how there's this unique quality of especially in the residential sector, that people feel very confident of stuff they have no idea and that they don't even know, right?
We
Yeah.
did a video for Huber yesterday, Christine from Building Science Fight Club.
Yes.
Because of the whole field nailing, and people freak out if the nail head penetrates a 16th of an inch into the sheeting. They think instant moisture intrusion, the house is going to rot. And so every time I get that question, I always send it to her. Now she's got a website, overdrivenfasteners.com, which, like, why would anyone buy that website? So she has, and then there's...
She's just funny. That's why. 'Cause
Yeah, she's awesome.
It's very entertaining.
But people are just adamant, or how you run your sheeting, horizontal versus vertical. They don't understand seismic, or that wind can affect either of those. Local codes can affect it.
Which
They
way do
see-
you guys do it?
Vertical.
And because you want to tie the walls to the band joist, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
And it's less labor, less
And how,
walking.
how does someone like what are they arguing and
It's because of the strength axis stamp on the panel. And I've had guys, of course, everyone spells shear with two E's instead of an EAR.
and it's sheeting, not sheathing.
Yeah.
Sheeting.
That's
yeah.
how you know. If they talk to you about sheeting, you can probably ignore it.
Yep.
Yeah. They equate. I had one guy, like, last week or the week before, try to tell me, well, how do you lay it up for a floor? Perpendicular to the supporting members. Point made. No,
No,
it's
that's a different thing.
It's a different thing. And the shear, two E's, that invisible force that no one knows where it's at. It's like, okay. It's just that people don't know, and they see that strength axis, and So I went over to the Norboard booth because
They
they're
make super tall panels, right?
super tall panels, and there's the strength axis going the same parallel. It's a different force.
And those panels go up to 10 feet?
I think you can get those up to 12 feet.
Wow, that seems like that would be super helpful.
So for them, their windstorm product.
Yep.
If you go from mudsill and you split the rim,
Mm-hmm.
you can avoid straps on your load paths between the two floors.
That's huge.
Nobody's on a ladder that second time. You're
Right.
not adding additional blocking. You don't have to get an additional tool. All of that stuff. It's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer. But you still get
literally
pushback.
right because we get pushback from the no-brainers. I
Yeah.
guess.
But I think with that one, because we're in seismic design category D2,
Can you briefly tell our audience
we're
what that means?
expecting a big earthquake. That's the technical
We need to have
term.
these guys on more often, Jeff. It's like
But I think
way
it's-
funnier than I am.
I think it's the APA that has in a footnote when you run it vertical in seismic design D2 what your nail pattern needs to be. So yes, you're going to listen to somebody on Instagram, but get into the IBC or the IRC or the mechanical code and kind of find out what's there, or what's Stebrick's Building Science Corporation.
Yes.
Try to read his papers and understand them. You know, it's pretty readable stuff. So it's definitely not just, well, somebody on IG said it. I'm sure it's accurate. You know, you have to double check it.
Sure.
That's my thing because Christine asked. I'm not the expert, but I know where to find the experts. So, like, she's an expert. Send her about overdriven fasteners. If somebody says something about sheeting, go to the APA.
Yeah.
Because in all, like, iJoist information, any of the companies, there's the APA.
Yep.
And so when the the APA shows on one side horizontal panels and in the same detail says vertical, and then like footnote E says
Yep.
can be run horizontal or vertical. And these guys that will argue with me, that's fine. This is an educational thing. But here's my references.
Yes. Where are yours?
Where are yours? And if you have them, that's great. Now let's all benefit.
Yes.
And it's not to say that one side, it's not to say that vertical is as strong as horizontal with blocking. But is it as strong as it needs to be? The answer is yes. So
And-
that's not the argument. It's efficient design and engineering, not just, if you're in the Midwest, you might not need design category D2. So don't build to that. But here we do. So understand that and then build to what you need to do.
Amen. that's the truth. It's
Yeah.
like
So now,
there are rules.
Yeah, yeah.
Know the rules.
now a lot of those guys that you're talking about who don't know everything that they're talking about, and some of them are just, they don't like change.
Yeah.
But there's some people out there that they just haven't learned it yet.
Yep.
So, or they don't even know that they should be learning it. So, like, what do you say to those people? Like, how did you guys start out always questioning everything you do, or is this something that's evolved over time? Or
That's a good question. So for me, Dad's always been big on education. So we could buy subscriptions to anything or videos. So I don't run Crown Molding, but I have all of Gary Katz's videos. And I grew up watching This Old House, and Norm
Yep.
Abrams, to me, it was just like, I'm going to be a fine woodworker someday. Well, I'm a framer. I'm not. But I still just love that stuff. So he always encouraged us to buy it. So like I was telling Gary Katz yesterday, I read every single framing article that Fine Homebuilding had. I had that old DVD archive.
Yes.
Every article JLC had. Every article the Timber Framers Guild had, just to do like a front porch. So it's just that I know somebody can do it better than me, and I don't like having to learn things the hard way, where you're just really frustrated, like trying to burn that mental path for the first time. That's the one that hurts.
Yes.
And so it's like somebody else out there has already done this. Find them. So with that kind of stuff, I used to spend a ton of time at the old break time forums on
And JLC too.
And JLC.
And
And
I
that-
remember you learning from others how to frame roofs in that period.
If you go back to like 02
Yeah.
and you search my name, you'll see that I'm that green guy that doesn't know anything. And all these guys were willing to share. And so then you find out, okay, the APA was in the iJoist catalog. What is that? Type it in, go find it. So it's all out there. It's just, so that's part of the reason why I focus a little bit more on that in between the singing and dancing on Instagram, is that there's just a lot of guys that don't know. Like one of the big arguments, the guy that taught me, on OSB, one side's rough and one side's smooth.
Mm-hmm.
So which side goes out? Which side goes in?
It's this side with the stamp goes in so the inspector can look at it.
And so I would find guys that would argue that seems logical. On roof sheeting, it's covered by roofing. How do I know where the stamp's at? Smooth side down. And when the manufacturer calls that a traction surface, it's so you don't fall off of it. Then they put nailing lines on it. So I had a guy tell me that you always put rough side against the studs or the rafters because it provides friction in an earthquake. Right.
Did he make that up?
I don't know where he got
Where
that.
would you get that?
But I remember one day going,
Logic.
yeah. Fuzzy math, fuzzy logic, yeah. But I asked him, then why are the nailing lines on the rough side? 16 and 24 going both
Right.
directions. And it was like, and the manufacturer calls them nailing lines.
You could see the wheels turning.
Yeah. And it's like that old transmission, just trying to find that gear.
Locked up and just quit.
And so on Instagram, that's Mark Hendrickson's a great framer, and he gets a lot of that flack. And so he did a little video where he had his little race cars, and he's like, I don't know what these lines are for. I guess they're just so that you can have your little Matchbox cars. And it's like, they're going both directions. And the whole idea of having 9-foot sheets doesn't break on 16 centers if you run horizontal.
Right.
And you know somebody out there may
Is
have cut
cutting
off.
those off.
It's like, no, don't do that. So that's what I kind of feel like, those guys that all help me learn, it's like now give back.
Who were those guys that you would say were most important to your getting your chops as a framer?
There was a guy in New York named Joe Fusco, and he's passed away. So generous. His website's probably still out there.
I had a few conversations with Joe.
He was
a wealth of knowledge.
He called me one day, and like classic New York. New York sounds a little bit rude compared to West Coast. It's just
because of the cadence of
yeah.
how
You're
people
not
talk.
rude. It's just the way.
And they're more direct.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And he just, at first I was like, I think he's mad. And then one day he called me and he's just like, he was really complimentary that somebody out there wanted to learn. And I was like, oh, okay, Joe's not a mean guy. He just sounded that way. But Joe was good. There was a guy, Joe Corolla. You'll see him all over the forums. This guy out of New Mexico, Ken Drake. He was the first time I ever heard of somebody. I think he taught math before. He literally made his living just generating the cut list for framers. So he put all these forums, or all these formulas on the forum, and he always used to tell me, he's like, yep, just send me a bottle of Glenfiddich. I had no idea what that was. I'm like, okay, it's in the mail. Yeah, right, you still don't. At least I'm pronouncing it right, I think. But those guys were so generous. And there was a guy, Joe Bartok, his geometry website was like, you can't read it. It's
I remember that too.
Reading mechanical engineering drawings or electrical schematics.
I kind of remember like it wasn't a cone roof, but it was like an ellipse that was a cone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wouldn't know how to draw that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I was talking to Mike Slogat last night. There was that George Collins book with the blue cover, and you develop all these geometric drawings. And so whatever the inside corner curve is, depending on the radius, like a hallway that takes a corner, how do you get that curve? And you develop those drawings. And I bought that, have that book, and most of it went over my head. There's a group of Instagrammers now that are really smart and have all rediscovered that book. And I can't wait to see them distill it because they seem to have the mind for it.
That they can make the rest of us understand.
Exactly.
That's what we need.
Yeah, which is awesome. Yeah, Byron Builds from Vancouver and Carpentry by Mar. Those guys just, they can put that information out there. And they're like,
what do you think that the motivation for them was? Like, why do it?
They like puzzles.
No, I meant
Right?
like why share? You know, like you hear so often in the industry, like, well, if I teach you how to do this, you're going to take my job, or you're going to go work somewhere else, or whatever it is.
I don't know what it is, but I really respect it. Meeting all these guys here this weekend, everybody's been super friendly. And I think that's an old mentality. I've heard that guys that worked in union, you know, the old guy doesn't want to give all of his tricks to the young guy. And now we're just sharing it all because we're all getting a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when we're all a little bit better, then our industry gets a little more respect.
Sure.
And so everybody's benefiting, even if we're across the country or, you know, that people are in Canada. I get messages from guys in Ireland. Totally different way of doing things.
It's all masonry, right?
A lot of it, yeah, and they fully scaffold their buildings, but they cut the roofs. And Australia, same thing. There's a bigger emphasis on safety there. And so some of that kind of trickles in.
I can tell you there's been a sea change in my career. You know, when we used to put stuff on the cover at either JLC or Fine Homebuilding that inevitably showed unsafe practices, nobody cared. Mm-hmm. Or they would say, if Mike Gurton told me this, he's like, if folks would see him wearing safety glasses or gloves or whatever, people were like, well, that's not real. That's fake. But now, boy, people really let us have it when they see something that's unsafe. And that's good.
Dave Frain sent me an email. We did a Rakewell article back in like 2005. Lifted the wall, and Kyle's our tallest guy. He's 6'4".
I remember that.
He's standing on the top rung of a wood ladder stretched to nail a brace. Didn't cross my mind. And JLC's like, we can't really publish that. Why not? And then he sends me some of the mail they got. You'd think you were going to get a bomb in the mail from these people.
Yeah, I know. They're very angry.
very angry, no punctuation, everything's lowercase. Like somebody's just ranting, and they're going to report us, and we're going to go to jail. And okay, we got to pay a little more attention to that kind of thing. So their heart was in the right place, but the execution was bad.
Yeah, and you never really solve anything by yelling at people, right?
At least he hadn't discovered all caps.
And he didn't take a series of magazines, clip out individual letters, mail them to the paper, and then send it like a ransom note.
What do you guys see? I'm going to ask you, Bryan. What do you think the biggest challenges to the industry are right now? Like, this is a conversation we've been having ongoing here at the show. What do you think is our big challenge?
I think knowledge, because instead of just focusing on getting 0.5 air changes per hour, well, first, that's at 50 pascals, what does that actually mean?
It means a 70-mile-an-hour wind on all sides.
I know what it means. It's 20 miles an hour. But anyway, everybody seems to be so focused on just that. But I think there's way more important things to learn, like structural engineering. Even if you're not an engineer, understand lateral restraint. What does that mean? If you're going to be using these different materials, how does the whole house work as a system? So if you're using VRF,
Tell me what that is.
Variable refrigerant flow.
Okay.
Daikin mini split. If you're going to do that, and you're going to get tight, do you need to provide fresh air? If you do, how do you do it? And so I think there's a whole lot of how everything integrates together. There's just a lot of baseline knowledge to gain. So to kind of go back to your other question, it's what Timmy said, you read everything, like all the time, just to get a general knowledge, but then sometimes you have to target one specific thing to learn, and sometimes that comes when you just fail. So we had a home inspection, and we needed to put a mechanical platform for our ducted unit in the attic. We'd never had to do that. Our code officials didn't require it. It was just...
So this is so someone can access the unit to service it,
Exactly.
I presume? So you don't have to step on the insulation or step through someone's floor, or ceiling, rather.
And it goes to what you're saying with safety. I mean, the mechanical contractors who are going to listen to this will say, oh man, how many attics actually have the catwalk that's supposed to do it? So we failed. So I get into the IRC, and as I recall, the IRC says, see the mechanical code. So then you have to go to the mechanical code, M whatever it is. Read all of those parameters, understand it, so that the next house we build, we can go, okay, here's what the platform needs to be. Our mechanical contractor loves it. The cool thing is then we get to work together, Timmy and I, and we can value engineer what actually makes sense. All right, we don't want to compress our insulation, throw some 2x10s in the attic crossways, 2 4x8 sheets. They've got 32 square feet, done. And so
And it took 15 minutes.
Yeah, do it when
Exactly.
you're framing the roof. Now we have something to stand on. We got 2 full, 4x8 sheets up there.
We got a light up there. We got a IntelliBalance from Panasonic. If I have to get up there, it's super easy. I feel better. If my kid wants to get into the industry, I feel like we've got a safe job site.
Yes.
So that's a huge factor. Timmy works for us. I want it to be safe for him. So it's all of those things. It's the safety. It's the fire code. It's and then the finishes, because it has to look pretty. So I think just recognizing how much knowledge there is to try to gain to be proficient.
Well said.
I have to say, you guys are really inspirational, because I don't think I've had this dense a conversation that's about how thoughtful you are in the way you go about your business. It's really, really inspiring.
Well, thank you.
Rock stars.
Usually when the word dense is used, and it's fitting. It is true, though. That's our thing.
I was going to ask you the same question. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing our industry?
Probably labor.
The lack of.
The lack of, yeah.
What do we do about that?
I have no idea. I was walking around with Ellie yesterday and Natasha, and she said is it tradeswomen of IG?
I believe so.
know.
I think you got it right.
I think I got it right. Natasha told me that she gets pushback from women when she's promoting the trades.
What do you mean?
I don't know. Just
They push her?
dismissive. No, and you don't want to push her. She's tough. Yeah, I really had a lot of respect for her. I mean, she speaks the lingo.
You guys will have to listen to the podcast we recorded yesterday with Misha from Home Advisor. He's an economist. And it was one of the most edifying discussions about business. And one of the things that the industry has recognized is that's a huge problem is labor skill.
Well, and women bring a different set of skills.
So
why not embrace that?
he mentioned a survey that the NAHB had done, or maybe it was Home Advisor. Forgive me, Misha. I don't remember where the survey was, but he said when surveyed, 55% of contractors said that they didn't think that bringing women or encouraging or recruiting women to the industry would help. And he's like, that's the wrong answer. And what do you think that is? What is the problem with contractors being fearful of having women doing construction work?
Well, talking to Ellie yesterday and Christine, for their Instagram accounts, they have to be a little bit more cognizant of how they present themselves.
What do you mean?
They're attractive.
Yeah.
And they want the information.
And we're not. So
well, and
we
we're
don't
not.
really have to worry about that.
But you think, or they have to be concerned about that?
Yeah, because this is a mostly male society,
and
as
some of
we've
those guys
seen,
are really creepy, I'm sure.
Look at this whole Me Too movement thing.
Yeah.
Like we figured out that all those people we thought were kind of creepy are creepy,
Yes.
and people we didn't know were creepy
Are still creepy.
are still creepy.
Yeah.
And our industry is dominated by people like that.
Yep.
So if it was my daughter, I'd be real concerned about her going to work in Seattle in the unions, because there was a young woman that was here that has been on TV that apparently got groped on her way out by somebody that owns one of these booths. He was drunk, and so somebody told me that yesterday that was with her, and I thought, so she came here to do an appearance, she's well known, and somebody took things in a direction they shouldn't have.
That's unbelievable.
But that's our culture, unfortunately, and I won't get off on this side topic of how entertainment plays into that. People are weirdos. And so I would be justifiably, I think everybody would understand that. Do I really want my daughter at 18 to go into? I knew a young woman that was a foreman. She's an electrician. I think she could hold her own against anybody.
Yep.
Rachel was something else. But that's not every woman. And so we're reticent. And then if you have people that are pushing back because they don't even want to adjust the environment on the job site. But I do think that women that is a resource.
Totally untapped.
Totally untapped, and they bring a different way of doing things, looking at things, that would make the industry better. Not just as far as we have more bodies, but now we have a different way of looking at things.
I totally agree. When I was working at Habitat, there were tons of women, right? I think there was actually a greater percentage of women coming out to volunteer than men. There was no difference in their ability or knowledge. And like, the one thing I observed is like, when a woman didn't know something about a construction process, she would ask. Whereas a guy is just going to plunge ahead and try and figure it out on his own, whether it's wrong or not. And that was troublesome.
Christine told me when she first got on Instagram, one of the first things she saw on my page was this debate about horizontal versus vertical sheeting.
Yeah.
She goes, I didn't know anything about it, so I researched it. That's what we want in the industry, right? But speaking to your point, all these other guys are like, this is the way we've always done it, type. They don't go and look it up to go, I wonder if. Like one guy in Vancouver said, yeah, the engineer came on site to do an inspection. I asked him, and he goes, no, you can go either way. Just make sure the edges are blocked. Most guys apparently aren't humble enough to ask, right, for directions. Meanwhile,
I don't understand why. I mean, would you rather do something wrong in your like normal life, or would you rather ask someone a question? Kyle and I separately ran the math.
We were pouring rain a couple weeks ago. Let's just build the stairs and go home. Work through lunch. You go run the math, and I'll go run the math. We'll draw it out, make sure that we get it right, because we don't want to do it wrong and tear out a stair landing. What do you think happened?
You had to tear out a stair landing.
We both made the same mistake. We set the string, and we're like, one rise too low. Sound, a ringing cat claws. Raise that thing. So I always tell people, they're like, what do you think your best skill is? Pulling nails. We're really good at pulling nails.
They're the fastest new construction remodelers in the West.
That's what we always say, yeah. You want a window in that wall that's not there? We'll get it in real quick.
Do you guys make a story pole for your stair layouts?
No, because our finishes are always the same. It's not too technical.
Okay.
It really is pretty idiot-proof.
So I do that just because I'm an idiot.
We always draw out, so it's not a technical story pole. We draw it out, count the rises. Okay. What we did is counting down from the top to the landing is we both counted the upper floor as one.
Yeah.
That was 0. I've literally never made that mistake.
I'm surprised. I think I've made that a few times.
It was beat into me. If you draw it out, you'll never make a mistake. Well, drawing it out would have prevented it. It's learning to count.
Yeah.
That turns out to be a fundamental
What's the
skill.
biggest problem in construction?
Counting.
Math.
Yeah.
1 through 3.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, it's like there's different skill levels in math in any field, but it's certainly important in carpentry. And I think there's a lot of people who get by just by counting on their tape measure. You know, it's like they don't know how to do equations on a piece of paper, but they can, count the steps on the inches. And
I would argue that if you get the right answer, I don't think it matters too much how you get it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there are easier ways to get an answer than others, but at the end of the day, if the stairs are correct and you feel confident, you did a good job. What's wrong with whatever you did it?
Yeah, there's a quote, I don't remember where I heard it, but there's 5 ways to do thing and 1 way is the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a kind of a great motto. For me, I try not to micromanage too much. Here's the principle. I've told my brother-in-law works for us, and I'm like, Greg, I'm going to tell you what I think should be done now, but when I drive away, if you're thinking about it and you go, no, I think this would be the way to do it, I'm like, you know how I think. As long as it's within the principle of what I'm trying to accomplish, I'm not going to micromanage you. And I've tried to tell these guys the same thing.
And I think that is a very important skill that many supervisors lack. And I think you actually do a disservice to your business if you don't teach your employees to think critically. And if you're guiding every decision of theirs, they're not going to get that skill.
No, and they'll come up with better solutions.
Yes.
Their boots on the ground, they'll do it one way, and then they'll go, well, they'll talk at break. Well, maybe there's a different way to do it or what have you. Just let them be specialists.
Our best ideas are from the new guy. We never used our laser plumb bobs to plumb walls. Like tall walls we would, but not 8-9 foot walls. And then we'd pull out the plate level. And one day Justin goes, why don't we use the PLS there like we do on the tall walls? And we all just looked at each other and went, because we never thought of it before. Okay, that's a new technique. We don't use spirit levels anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have ever actually made that connection.
Well, because it's pretty easy to use a spirit level.
Yeah, and that's the way I was
You
trained.
got it. It's always sitting right there and within reach. You're like, why not just grab it and use it, right? Yeah.
But now it's the laser. So much, now it's a one-man job.
Oh my God.
One-person job.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Back before lasers were affordable, I worked for a modeling company where I had to lay out an entire floor on an old bumpy concrete foundation, like 7 feet off of the basement floor with an 8-foot level, all the way around the entire room. And I'm like, if I had a laser level, that would have been done in like 2 minutes.
And it's true.
Yeah.
What other tools do you guys see as really changing your method of work? Except, you guys have a telehandler, do you still?
We have 2, and the first one that we bought, what was that?
It was an old 1978 Badger Dynamics. We couldn't even track down the manufacturer. It had been bought out, and it ultimately turned into Gell.
Okay.
And I think Gell's even been bought out.
They had to park it. Did the brake not work, or
We
what was
had
the
no
deal?
brakes on the old forklift.
So one time, when they're first tilting a wall in for one of the first times, I had a different business, and I'm watching them. I'm in the cul-de-sac, and I think to myself, I didn't get builder's risk insurance on this
we hung the windows in that
I
wall.
was so nervous. I was like, all right, I'm out. And I had to just take off. But that was from Dad. He had wanted a forklift, probably in the 90s. So we got that one, and it made so much sense.
Yeah.
So we've had 2 of them for quite a while now. What I could see is there's a booth over in the safety place. I've been following the exoskeletons for a while. I think the military's into it. I know you guys did a post on it as well. I could see that in the right usage coming into the industry more. So that's what I think.
Forklift changed everything.
Yeah.
How so?
We went from just stick building everything on the ground to thinking in terms of panelizing on the job site.
So you'd make assemblies and then lift them into place.
Yeah.
And what's the advantage of that? No, you're not working at height.
Yep.
That's the biggest advantage.
Eliminate
We're not working
risk.
in the mud.
Uh-huh.
You're not
Which
moving
is-
a ladder 20 times.
Yeah, so building rake walls. For you guys on the East Coast, that's where I learned to build rake walls, and that you could hang windows inside a wall.
And put on overhangs and
The whole thing. And on the West Coast, everybody says, you can't do that. Okay, maybe you can't, but they do, so let's learn how to do it.
Right.
Well, and then Timmy balloon frames his walls too. So that's kind of goes back to the conversation about structure. We don't have a hinge point typically in our walls. So it's going to perform
Is that
better.
part of the seismic concerns? Is the balloon framing?
No,
It's-
it's just
it's-
what...
So just your
Efficiency?
gable end walls?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Efficiency.
Yeah, and we have really good code officials where there's one house in particular where it's a 2-story high wall plus gable, and so I order LSL to get to the top because it's almost 30 feet tall. We frame sheet the entire thing on the ground, hang the windows, and then we side pick a point like at maybe 5 feet and side all the way to the top. Now when we come back to side that, we're working at eye level or lower.
That's awesome.
And we had one inspector, he was newer, but he had done our insulation estimating. And I told him, he gets out, well, how am I supposed to? It's the second floor, you can't see it. Let's go inside. We leave the shiners. Now you know what size nail it is.
Yeah.
For shear wall inspection.
Yeah. They understand that code officials, the whole principle of safety. So they'll let us tape all of our seams. We leave off like the heavy nailing shear walls down low because it's easy to get to.
Yep.
You can feel through the zip tape. You can even kind of tell if they're overdriven. But when I explain, I'll take tape off anywhere you want. You tell me where. No one has ever called my bluff. So I'll just cut a swath to show them. They can see field nailing. But when I explain now no one's on ladders, they get it. A lot of these guys are ex-military where it's a lot of safety is promoted. And they get that principle.
It's something we need to do a better job in the business of protecting our workers. And
it's true.
Not wearing them out.
And manufacturers like Super Anchor Safety's close to us. They're here at the show. They have such a diverse collection of fall protection that we're on the roof on the next one. They've got for fall restraint. They call it their 2D because it connects to the D rings at your waist.
Yep.
To the rope in fall restraint only. But now, instead of having that rope over your shoulders, which just wears you out, it's in front of you. You just kick it to the side.
Yeah.
They teach you how to reverse rig so that the length of the rope is fixed and you can't go off the edge. Their stuff is comfortable.
And it's not that expensive.
It's not that expensive. Kiefer at Toolaholic is pushing into more safety this year. A lot of like respiration. Silica is the next big asbestos, right?
I see people cutting like concrete on roadways with huge 3-foot diamond saws, and they have nothing on their face. Sometimes they have a bandana like tossed over their mouth, and I'm just like, well, you're killing yourself. What are you doing?
Well, you see the first responders September 11th, what they're going through.
Yes.
But we're putting our construction workers in a similar environment. Yeah. What do you think that's going to do? Because the small particles, when they get in your bloodstream and your lungs, they're not coming out. I think one advantage we have is, well, he's my brother. And then the other guys, we're a small crew. So when you actually care about them, I don't want Timmy to be a 50-year-old broke-down framer.
Yeah.
So what can you do to increase his longevity? And I don't mean that in terms of economics. It's just
quality of life.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I'm 42, no injuries.
Amazing.
You get like 3 stitches every 3 years.
Yeah. Well, I can think of a few.
But nothing traumatic.
Yeah.
Like when I was growing up, it was like, okay, have something to fall back on, because all the guys that we knew that had framed for us all have back injuries.
In their 40s, probably.
Yeah, or younger. They fell off a ladder or something, because ladders really are one of the, more than a leading edge, sometimes ladders you overestimate, and that's where a lot of people will fall and hurt themselves.
Well, Fred became, he didn't work for us, but he became paraplegic or quadriplegic?
Quadriplegic, because he busted the truss bands. He was only 8 feet. Just that pressure knocked him off, and he just landed on his neck wrong. He was a guy that did work for us, Frank and Fred, but he wasn't working for us at the time. As a little kid, I remember pounding nails with those guys.
So
that's tragic.
It's tragic.
It's in the 80s.
And it's so unnecessary.
I was born in 80, but I still remember that. So there's that institutional knowledge that we just understand what can happen in the industry, so that just plays a factor.
The stakes are really high.
Yep.
You know, people die on construction sites all the time.
Well, I was talking to those guys over at the, what is that, Gorilla Ladders over there, those green ladders.
So they make an articulated and like extension ladder, right? It's like kind of a
hybrid. Little Giants?
Little Giant ladder?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a Little Giant, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what about it?
Well, one of the features they added was this clicker bar on the bottom rung of the step.
Yeah, so you can
of the ladder, so that you know when you're on that bottom rung and you're not going to step off the second rung of the ladder because you think you're on the ground already.
Yep.
That's really startling when that happens, I got to say, when
Yeah.
you're like 2 up.
Yeah, or you're not paying attention, you step off the floor and your leg is extended. That's where you can
Just
really mess
jars
up your
you.
knee.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great feature. You hear the click when somebody's coming, because we've got one where I'm going to review one. It's a super stable extension ladder, too.
It looks
good.
really nice. Yeah.
Cool.
This was so fun, guys.
We're done?
You want to keep going? We can keep going. We're not we got nowhere to be.
Yeah, neither do I.
I have one other opinion I'll share with you.
Please.
I have no idea if this is going to be true because I'm not an economist from Harvard.
Okay.
But you just wonder if over time people aren't going to start charging more with market economics. You know, you ask what's going to get people into the industry. Well, why are people hedge fund managers?
Right.
Because it pays.
Right.
So over time, if there's not enough electricians, plumbers, if framers are
Supply and demand, right?
professionals, I've listened to your podcast, however many episodes, and I just think, and I don't know, again, but you go, is market economics going to go to that kid? I can earn $95 an hour as a framer. Okay.
I totally believe that. That is going to be what brings more young people into the industry when they realize they can make a good living, right? And not be saddled in debt and have 4 more years of additional schooling. Why not get paid to learn a good wage, right?
But they have to learn the economic side of what goes into the business, what's my overhead, how do I apportion that out, and then play around a little bit to find out what your market will bear. Because people have to have their houses fixed.
Yes.
That's when your plumbing goes out, $95 an hour, I don't have a choice.
And that stuff is never going to be outsourced. We are not going to be able to call people in China to come fix our plumbing. That's just not going to happen.
You know, somebody asked a question last night when we were out about almost what you're talking about. Like, okay, so that's easy to justify in the Northeast or any of the coastal areas where people are paying $500,000, $1 million for a house. But what do you do if you live in some rural town where houses cost less than $100,000, and now if you paid someone $100, $95 an hour, these people could never afford to fix anything on their houses. So it's like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, there have always been people who fixed their own houses out of economic necessity. I grew up in one of those houses. But you have to make a living. You can't.
Yeah. If there's no market in our town, we don't have a Lamborghini dealer. But I bet you there's one in Beverly Hills. So if there's no market for it, then that, to me, then it just is what it is.
Yeah. What's your singular piece of advice for young folks who are thinking about enter the trade?
Personally, when people ask me, I really want to get into framing, pick something more technical like HVAC or plumbing.
Because of the wages?
The wages, and it'll be easier on your body. You know, it's a race to the bottom with framing. I'm fortunate because we're in-house.
Yep.
You know, we self-perform. I would not be a framer if I was... I've worked for other builders when the market was slow. It's not fun. It's... I see some of these poor guys, and they want to do some of the things we're doing, but they just can't do it because it's just a race.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sad that way because it is a technical job. Maybe if there was some kind of barrier to entry that required certifications, and that would kind of raise the wages a little bit.
So there's some of that in some parts of the country. Do you think that helps?
I just don't have.
Yeah.
I'm not the guy to actually know that. I can't imagine it wouldn't, because guys would a lot of the guys I learned from didn't have high school educations.
Mm-hmm.
They're good framers. I mean, things were plumb level and square.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have, what's your selling point? That you can swing a hammer? Well, how long can you do that for? And these are the old days, no forklift, 28-ounce hammer.
Yeah, sure.
Like the guy that I have the most respect for, Will Holliday, who his book, Roof Cutter Secrets, his old articles, that guy to me is just the epitome of the nostalgic production framing. A lot of injuries. Coolest guy. I mean, most of us wouldn't know what we know if he hadn't published his material. But he paid for it later. He's emailed me and said, do not frame past 40. Well, I'm not swinging a 28-ounce hammer. I have forklifts. Will traveled around as a freelance roof cutter, and it was pedal to the metal.
Right. Just brutal production.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's such a smart guy and a good educator. So if you're just that person if your only skill is just your strength from your body, which we all know will give out eventually.
Yes.
So there has to be more of a cerebral aspect to it. And I feel like for us, and I think throughout the country, the idea of structures that have resilience, disasters are off the charts, right? High event, seismic, all these things. And so we have to build for those. I know, now I hear that and it's like...
Is that your forklift?
Yeah, right.
Did you drive it here from Washington?
Yeah, at 10 miles an hour. Yeah, it took a while. But that kind of thing, even technical. So for us, forklift certification, rigging certification, first aid, ladder, scaffold, all of these things that Pioneer Builders pays for us to get the certifications.
Yep.
None of our competitors are doing that. So there's no level playing field. I like Australia. I see those guys. It's mandatory that the buildings are fully scaffolded. Now it's not one company pays $10,000 more in scaffolding than it levels it.
Sure.
You have to mandate that. I don't know how you do that in this country. You can't get people to agree on anything.
Agreed.
The divide, except that.
I don't agree.
There it is.
I don't agree with that.
But it's so polarized and no one meets in the middle on anything anymore that how do you even tackle a problem like that when there's no mutual... Steve Basic, the other day, I posted a rafter detail that we're going to do. It's open soffits. Steve does a hand sketch and posts it on, as he says, an alternative way. It's a better way.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he messages me and says, hey, I hope you didn't take that the wrong way. Remember the old days when you could have rigorous debate and mutual respect and still be friends even though you had opposite opinions?
Yep.
That was a long time ago.
Seems like.
Yeah, and I
Seems
told
like-
him, I said, no, do that every time. His was hand-drawn, so the lines weren't that straight. So I told him, for an architect, shouldn't you learn how to draw straight? At least mine was with SketchUp.
Take a class on sketching,
Yeah.
Steve.
But I appreciated that he actually reached out to say that. I didn't take it the wrong way, but it's like, no. By the way, he's an architect. I'm a framer. Who are you going to go to for details?
He's just really smart.
Steve.
And he has training that is invaluable.
And the willingness to share.
Oh, man.
Every Friday, he messages me, are you going to go live on Instagram tonight? I was like, well, I wasn't planning on it, but well, please do it. And then he says he works and he leaves it on in the background because it lets him have an ear to what people are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives him access to a group of people from across the country that you don't have.
It goes back to what you were saying, like, you need to be improving yourself all the time. It's and architects, same thing. You have to be educating yourself and getting better, making better details for people, learning different methods to improve yours.
Yeah, I follow like civil engineering, at least one, maybe more than one, accounts on Instagram, and they get really technical, and I just gobble it up. Just trying to learn as much as you can. How do you build a road? What are the different layers? Everybody says, subgrade, grade, base, subbase. I have to Google it because I think a lot of people are using different language. Try to understand those things. Then when it comes time for us to lay asphalt, I've got this whole nother realm of understanding. Instead of just the asphalt contractor coming and I just hire him, we'll just do it. Well, now I kind of have an idea of what he's actually supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
We got that from Dad because growing up, in the old days, I used to get to sit on the bulldozer with the excavator.
Sure.
And Dad always was out there when they were clearing land. He used to frame. Like he said, he's not a framer. He was a laborer. But because he was hands-on with things, not an expert, but at least he understands it.
Yeah.
You learn what questions to ask.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's key to success.
Yeah, I think my answer to your question is advice to give other people: don't be a jerk. That simple. Just whether you're a boss or whether you're an employee or you're working with subs, or just don't be a jerk and listen to people. I know that's two pieces of advice, but it goes hand in hand.
Well, and it's not new, right? Jesus said, treat other people the way you want to be treated.
Yes.
There's nothing new with that advice, but guess what? Kind of works. If you treat, even on Instagram, when people are jerks, don't respond to them the same way.
Yeah.
Hey, can you show me the reference for that? Don't mistreat them, because then it's all a race to the bottom. Who can be the most sarcastic? Well, no one wins.
Right. And it just makes me mad.
Yeah.
It's just like it's not healthy.
And for example, I posted a week ago, people always ask, how do your tools do in the rain? They do outstanding. All the cordless stuff, we have not had a tool. We've left tools out in the rain overnight and we come in. We're glad somebody didn't steal it. Pull the trigger, it works. But we would blow them off with compressed air,
Yep.
so I post a video. And 4 guys say, hey, that's an OSHA violation. You can't clean anything with compressed air over 30 PSI at the nozzle. That's not true, Google. First thing that comes up, okay, I got to delete that video. So I'll find another way to clean tools that I can post and then credit those guys for saying, hey, and when you look up the reason, it's not because it's hard on the tool necessarily.
It's because rust could come out and hit you in the eye.
So, okay, well, you could put safety glasses on. It's when that compressed air gets under your skin that causes all kinds of problems, which I was taught in woodshop in 8th grade. Don't clean off your... But we could do it. We're wearing gloves, right? And it's, no, you shouldn't. So if I'm that egotist that's like, well, I have this many followers on Instagram, go back to your... No, look it up.
Yeah.
They were right. Thank you, guys. Now we just prevented a potential injury.
Yes.
And thankfully, none of them were really jerks about it. They're like, hey, you might want to look into OSHA rule, whatever.
I didn't know that.
I didn't.
Did you know that? It's not. Yeah.
30 PSI, you can't clean things with.
I thought
I mean,
you
might
were
as well
supposed to
breathe
use
on it.
compressed air for the tools. I would have said that, a couple of weeks ago, that it's, especially with mechanical equipment, you don't want to just, if you're doing your maintenance, use compressed air to clean it all out. You want to.
And I would always tell guys, don't blow the sawdust out of your hair with compressed air. Because in wood shop, they taught us if it gets under your skin, but it didn't even cross my mind not to clean off my saw.
So now I know why our tool budget is what it is. Just kidding.
It's 0. We try to abuse stuff too.
Stuff gets abused.
Yeah,
You know.
it's going to, so we try to do that. Years ago, I did a review for JLC of all the Jobsite radios.
Yes.
Push them off the house.
We
And
did the
people
same.
couldn't believe that but they had survived. Now we can say with confidence. We did it. They work.
They can still dance.
My first assignment for Fine Homebuilding was testing Jobsite radios, and Justin and I were dropping them off I think it was a 16 or 18 foot step ladder,
Nice.
and some did better than others. Yeah, don't buy Makita.
The old one, yeah. Well, they were, so in the day, they were CDs, right? The MP3
Yes.
CDs. I have to go home and burn them to bring them to the job site. They would skip, but it still worked, you know.
It's better than silence.
Yes. Yeah.
It has been so nice talking to you guys.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Sure.
What's next on the agenda for you guys today?
I'm finishing the South Hall. Everybody says they don't make it through, but I sure do.
I'm going to try.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
There's a lot of stuff I haven't seen, so I'm going to power walk it.
Thanks for coming on, and thanks to
you.
all of you for listening, and happy building.